Welcome Dan the Rockman as we make a easy ring with the dinosaur bone. Things you'll need in order to make this ring are going to be a piece of sterling silver. This is 24 gauge. It can be 22, 24. You could even do thinner or thicker. You're going to need a steel block, a brass hammer, and a leather hammer to get things straight. You're going to need solder. I used medium solder and easy solder. Easy solder was on the very last. You'll need some type of flux. You're going to need a pickle pot and some clean water. I have some bristles for polishing. I just went up to 400, and then I used the buffing wheel. You're going to need metal shears to clean it off. You're going to need some half round wire. This is 8 gauge 0.128. And then to set your stone, you're going to need those tools right there. Bezel and hold the ring. Of course, you're going to have to pick out your stone. Do that. And then you're going to need a ruler of some sort to get the exact measurement of the ring shank that you want. You're going to need a saw to cut it, and a file, and a marker right there, and then I use that pair of pliers also for coming in and straightening the bezel. And of course you're going to need a bezel. Alright, there's several different styles. Let me kind of show them to you. The torches I use is MAP gas right there, a little butane torch, and then when I want it to get heated and just really small, heated fast I should say, I use an oxygen and MAP gas combination with the nozzle there, and I can get a small flame and pinpoint things. So those are the different things that I use in order to make this ring. And so I'm not with a real big setup. I don't have the acetylene. Those are the brushes that I use right there. Alright, so now that we have gone over all the tools that we're going to be needing in order to make this project, we need to go ahead and pick out our stones. So I had 3 stones right there, and I decided to go with the dinosaur bone. I also had a piece of jade, it looks like, and then also another piece of leopard skin jasper. But I went ahead and chose I wanted to make it round and chose the dinosaur bone. Alright, so now we're going ahead and looking at our bezel. I use a 0.13 by 1/8 inch bezel, and it's serrated. So I have to wrap it around the stone and then cut it, and then you want to make sure you have it very, very tight. Now it's very important to get that bezel to fit really perfect. So I'm really taking my time and going in here and making a really good meeting of the 2 ends of that bezel, and that you see me clipping it and doing well on putting it together. Here you see me using a small file to file the ends of the bezel before I put them together. It's very important to have a really flush fit on both sides. You don't want any gaps in there for when you solder. So you really have to take your time in making sure you get this. Now I'm trying to bend it and get it to fit good so I don't have any gaps, making sure I get it straight. Now it's time to go ahead and solder the bezel. In that, I'm just really fixing it, just trying to make sure I really have it good, good fit. And that sometimes it's really fast, you can get that done. Other times, as you can see, it took a little bit of time in that. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have a good fit on it. And then I'm going to use medium solder to go ahead and solder it, and I can use my little butane torch in order to get this soldered. Okay, I got it straight. Now I went ahead and I put a little bit of flux. You don't need to put much. And now, like I said, I'm using medium solder. I put that on there. And then I'll use my little butane torch right there and go ahead and fire it up. I usually like to take it on the inside and then drop it to the side. And then also I'll get the outside to kind of bring the solder out. After you do your solder, be sure to pickle your piece as I put it in my pot and clean it off. And do not put your stainless steel tongs into the pickle pot. Now I'm using a piece of already textured 24 gauge sterling silver, and I'm stamping my initials EE for Earth's Echoes on there, on the back of it, which will be kind of in the center. I'm using my leather hammer now to straighten that piece out. After I get it all straightened out, I want to clean it. As you see, I just pulled out my bezel. I'm cleaning that off. And then I'll form it around the stone and then put it on my piece of 24 gauge sterling silver plate. Here you see me filing the outside of the bezel. I want to get it a little bit smooth so that you hide the solder seam, and that I don't want to raise or a little burr on that bezel. And that's what I do. And then I go ahead and I form it around my stone, make sure I have a really good tight fit. And that at this point in time, sometimes you may need to go ahead and take care of your stone by getting it a little smaller if you had to. I'm sanding the bottom of the bezel to make sure that it's flat right there using sandpaper. The stone requested a selfie, so we went ahead and obliged right there. Now that I have my bezel to fit around my stone, I pick up my base plate, like I said, 24 gauge sterling silver, and I clean it off with some alcohol to make sure it's really clean, and then I go ahead and I put the solder flux on the base plate, and I put it around where I'm going to be putting my bezel. I put my bezel down, and then I go ahead and I put medium solder. I use medium solder again on the inside of that bezel, and then as you'll see on the torch, I go ahead and heat it up from the outside first. I lifted everything up and I put my charcoal block up on its stand to get it off the wood table for safety purposes. And as you can see, I'm going around my object on the outside of that bezel, on the outside of the base plate. I'm trying to heat the charcoal block up, and now I start to get it to go over the piece and that, and see me turning it. I'm trying to make sure that the solder is flowing all the way around to get an even soldered piece. Now that I have it completely soldered, I'm checking it out, and then what I'll do is go ahead and put it in the pickle pot, first dipping it in water, and then you put it in that pickle pot. And again, do not use your stainless steel tongs or tweezers, if you want to call it, to put it in. Just drop it in that pickle pot. Okay, now I'm going to clean it up, so I'm putting the brushes on. That is, I think, like a 60 grit right there, and I'll pull it out of the pickle pot and dry it off, and then we'll go ahead and clean it up just a little bit here. Now I take my metal shears and I go ahead and I trim down the excess off of it, try to make a little bit of a rounded shape around it on that base plate. But don't throw your trimmings away, so you want to go ahead and save them. I have a little pan underneath my desk there that I put them in, so that I could either use them, heat them up and make round balls, or I could go ahead and turn them in some other time and get some money on reclaiming that. Now I'm going and using a belt sander. So what I want to do is I want to shape that plate that I have the bezel sitting on and start getting it rounded to match the bezel. And so what I'm going to do is take probably about 1/8 of an inch or maybe 1/16 of an inch around that bezel, leave that as a little plate, a decorative plate for my ring right there. I'm putting my bench block back on, and I'm going to take my piece. Now I'm going to use a file in that to file the edges to get them soft, because they have kind of a rigid grind on the side from using that sander. And that, I believe it's like a 120 grit. If I could find a softer one, I would definitely use it. If I could get maybe like a 320 grit for that big bench sander. And that. But this will get it. I use my file, get it smoothed out, and I have a little groove in my wood, so I just slide it on over there and file it down smooth. Alright, time to go ahead and make that ring shank. So I'm using H gauge, half round, and .128 sterling silver. It might be fine silver. Okay, and I mark it. I use my ruler, so whatever size ring that you want. Now I don't do a completely round in that. I'll do it an opened ring. And you'll see that I'll use the sander to file it down just a little bit. So, but I'm going to kind of clean it up with that little file and that, trying to get all the sharp edges off of it right there. Alright, I bring out my big block, and I get my brass hammer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp the 925 into the ring shank. And then from there I'll go ahead and use my mandrel and my leather hammer and that to go ahead and shape it, and go ahead and kind of size it out for the size of ring that I'm wanting. I believe I did this one at about size 6, and that, but you can do it any size that you want. Don't forget to turn your ring over as you're sizing it, and then I take it off and I just make sure that I get it flat right there. And when I know that it's flat and I have it sized right, then I'm good to go. Now I'll just go ahead and use my bench sander and that to go ahead and grind it down just a little bit so that it will sit flatly onto my base plate of my ring. Okay, now what I do is I pull my charcoal block off, and I'm going to use a third hand tweezers, and I'm going to go ahead and put my ring shank in there, and then I will have my ring base plate, and I'll turn it upside down. But what you're going to see me do right now is I am measuring, sorry about my big head right there, but I'm measuring to try to get the center of the back of that, so that way when I put my ring shank on there, it will be straight and centered on my piece. That's very important, because you don't want it too far to one side or the other, and that makes a beautiful piece not very well done. So as you saw me put the flux on both pieces, and it just takes a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking my time to make sure that I have it centered very well, and I am going to use easy solder now. Everything else I've done. Now what I'm doing right there is I'm kind of drying the flux a little bit, okay, so sometimes I can do it. Now I'm getting out the torch that has the oxygen, so it'll be a little bit hotter. It'll heat things up much faster, and I can get a good solder on this by using that MAP gas and the oxygen. It gets really hot, and you have to be careful. You could even burn a hole through it. Start out heating the ring shank first, and then go ahead and bring it on down to the base plate, and that way you'll get a real good solder. After I soldered it, I make sure that I do have a good solder all the way around, and then I'm going to pickle it, put all my things up, get them out of the way, because the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the brushes to clean everything off. Make sure you put that back on the stand, because it's a little bit hot, that charcoal block there. Clean everything out, get everything out of the way. Let's get started by cleaning this up, and then we can get it polished and set the ring. I'm starting out with the yellow brush. I think it's like a 60 or 80 grit, and that cleaning everything off, cleaning everything around, trying to go ahead and hide any marks that are on there. And I'll continue that from that to like 120, 220, and then I can go up to 400. I mean, I could actually polish the whole piece using the brushes and that, but as you'll see me do, I'll just get it down a little bit, and then from there go ahead and use it on my polishing pad and use rouge polish. You can go ahead and use triply first and then go and do the rouge, but I just kind of get it up there and polish with the brushes and then just use the rouge. I hope that you're enjoying these videos, and be sure to go through and go back through and watch some of my other videos. I did a ring video, one of the first ones that I made. This was probably about 3 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago, and my volume was not very good on it. So I hope that I'm improving on my videos and getting them better, and so that you guys can learn and kind of follow along with me. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments down below as we continue this project. And that, if you have anything that you want to see later on in videos, go ahead and comment on that too. As you see, I've got the buffer out, and I'm putting a little bit of rouge on there, and using that piece. I have gloves that I use in that because it can get pretty hot, so I don't want to kind of burn my fingers, and it helps me hold on to the piece a little bit better. And you see it's starting to polish on up, and that looks good, and that will show it to you. Now once we get it all polished up, then I'm going to go ahead and set my stone in there. Just a word of precaution, you should be wearing a mask whenever you do this, and then clean the area really well and that to get all that dust out. It's not good to be breathing in that dust. So I apologize for not having my mask on for that video. time to set the stone, and it fits really well. Well, kinda. I'm having to use my pliers to open up the bezel a little bit because it got pushed down. Now that I can get it in there, push it down really good, and then I'll go ahead and put that in my ring holder and use my bezel closer tools and get that set in there so that it won't come out. And then we can kind of use a cloth on it and get it polished up really nice. So here's the tool. It just opens up and then squeezes in there, and so then I'm using it to try to push it. It's a little bit uncomfortable the way I'm doing it right now because I'm trying to get it for the camera to see, and that, which I'm not doing a very good job, but I'll keep on trying to work on getting better video of my working and maybe get a little bit more light in that. But I hope that you learned something from this. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. You want to give thumbs down, I hope not, but if you do, that's fine. And comment, good or bad. I read all of them and try to respond to all the comments. So I appreciate it. Take a look at the final ring. I'll have some pictures and close-ups of it. That's a dinosaur bone, so it's got some pretty color to it, pretty pattern in it.